Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us online, wherever you are. My name is Xiyang. I'm the CTO of Aggregate Intellect. Today, we're fortunate to have Shao Dian, who is a PhD candidate from multimedia from University of Hong Kong. Oh, sorry, I think it's Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Chinese.
She works at the multimedia labs at the CUHK.
Mhm.
Xiaodian's recent work, Xiaodian's group, I presume, primarily focuses on video action understanding. Dian will introduce more about her group later. Today, we're going to be talking about their most recent work called FineGym. It's actually a data set, but it's a very fine-grained video action understanding data set. And what's outstanding is that this paper received 3 strongly accepted scores at CVPR this year, which is quite impressive. We will hear about their experience in building this data set and why they decide to go very fine grained and how this data set is structured. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Shao and let her introduce her work on FineGym. Shao, take it away.
O- Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Shao Dian from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and I get up at around 5 o'clock to prepare for this talk. So at first I'm a little sleepy, but now I'm more excited. Um, okay, today I'm going to share our recent work, FineGym, a hierarchical video dataset for fine-grained action understanding. This is a joint work with Yue Zhao Bodai and our supervisor, Professor Dahua Lin. And fortunately, this work is also accepted by this year's CVPR conference as an oral presentation. But unfortunately, we cannot give a talk on site because this year's conference is an online conference. So then I will start. The content of this talk will be roughly divided into 2 parts. I will firstly introduce the details of the FineGym dataset, including the motivation, why we want to build this dataset, the challenges we have faced, and the construction process and the properties of FineGym. And next, I will present the empirical studies we did on top of FineGym, as well as some deep analysis and findings from these experiments. Okay, this is an overview. Too long, don't read. If you do not have enough time to listen to this talk, here I'd like to provide a very brief introduction about FineGym, which could help you grasp the key messages in several seconds. Okay, this GIF depicts an overview of the FineGym dataset. We provide course to find annotations, both temporally and semantically, in a hierarchical structure. Actions are described by event label like balance beam, and sub-actions could be described generally using set level labels and and more precisely using element level categories. So we hope FineGym could advance research towards action understanding. And if you have time, you can just follow me and we will see more details. Okay, first of all, maybe you want to ask a question. Why do we need to go deeper and more fine-grained towards action understanding? Well, to answer this question, let's first review the current research background. As we all know, on current benchmarks, the existing action recognition methods have already achieved great success, and their performance seems saturated on many existing benchmarks. And I think all standing researchers are all desired for new direction to explore. And also we found that existing techniques and the data sets that underpin their development are subject to an important limitation. That is, they focus on coarse-grained action categories. For example, hockey versus gymnastics. To differentiate between these kinds of categories, the background context often plays an important role, and sometimes even more important than the actions themselves. So this is not what we want for action understanding. The next is from the perspective of application. In some certain areas, coarse grain classification is not enough. So here we take spot analysis, for example. I show some different samples from the vol routines. So you can have a try to find, to differentiate one vol sample from another. So it's quite difficult, right? So here I will give the answer. The first one is runoff, leaf flag on, stretch, solo backward with 1.5 turn off. The second one is runoff, leaf flag on, stretch, solo backward with 2.5 turn off. The third one is runoff, leaf flag with half turn on, stretch, solo forward with 1.5 turn off. So you can, sounds very similar, right? So all these samples comes from our data set, and actually it is nearly impossible for current methods pre-trained on existing data sets. They cannot deal with such tasks. They cannot differentiate between these categories. Maybe it's also hard for you. But if we have an automatical spot analysis, it can help you to see such computations. Okay, it is worth noting that the fine-grained capability here involves two aspects. The first is temporal, that is being able to decompose a relatively complex action into smaller elements along the temporal dimension. The second is semantical, that is a model should be able to differentiate between subclasses at finer granularity. Okay, as stated, our goal is to build a high quality and fine-grained action dataset with hierarchical annotations, both semantically and temporally, to the community. However, things are not so easy. To build such a complex and fine-grained dataset brings a series of unprecedented challenges. The first problem we need to solve is how to collect the raw video data. Okay, generally, data for current large-scale datasets are collected in two ways. The first is you just search on the internet based on some predefined keywords. These words might be your categories and might be some concepts. The second one is to ask people to perform and record videos based on some given instructions. Unfortunately, neither way works in our case. So the first way functions well when collecting coarse-grained data, but when it comes to very fine-grained levels, such as I write it here, double solo backward tucked with two twists, the retrieved results hardly matches the query exactly. So if it's convenient for you, you can just search on the YouTube now. You can see the returned video, and you can see if the content matches the query. And according to my experience, so the retrieved results is far from satisfactory and usually suffer from low resolution and other problems. And on the other hand, due to the high professional requirements of gymnastic routines, they could hardly be performed by common people. They have only to be performed by those well-trained and very professional athletes. Thus, the second way fails. So the next problem is how to define and organize the categories. So this is not a question for most coarse-grained data sets. They just manually define a label set and organize the categories in that label set. But this way does not work for FineGym too, because FineGym has very rich granularities of categories, and the instances from those finest categories just very subtly. Okay, still challenges. The next challenge is how to collect annotations. As mentioned, adequate professional knowledge are required for annotators to produce the annotations. So this problem prevents us from utilizing crowdsourcing services such as the Amazon Mechanical Turk. And also, the element level categories are of a great number. So it is almost intractable for annotators to directly provide their categories. The fourth challenge is how to control the dataset quality. So we know that one of the most crucial things for fine-grained datasets is the quality. Since mislabeling of finer concepts will make a model more easily trapped in confusion. Compared with its coarse-grained counterparts, fine-grained annotations need more strict standards and well-designed measures to guarantee the quality. Okay, we have already reviewed all the challenges, and in the following, I will show how we try to solve these challenges in the whole dataset building process. Recall that the first problem we need to tackle is the data preparation. Main steps for collecting raw video data are listed here. We start by serving the top-level gymnastic competitions held in recent years, and we got a list year by year. And according to this list, we collect official video records of them from the internet. And during the collection, we manually ensure that these video records are complete, distinctive, and of high resolutions. And after that, we download them and cut them evenly into chunks of 10 minutes for further processing. Okay, so through these steps, I think the quality of data set is ensured by our choice of official video records. And recall that we have to have a hierarchical temporal structure. So the temporal structures of actions and sub-actions are also guaranteed as the official computations are consistent and rich in content. And what's more, data redundancy is avoided through manual checking. The next part is about annotation collection. Since crowdsourcing is not applicable as stated before, we hire a specific team and carefully train them for this job. So when annotating the data, we adopt a multi-stage strategy as illustrated in this figure. And I will introduce it in more detail. Okay, specifically, annotators are firstly asked to accurately locate the start and end time of each complete gymnastics routine in a video record, and then select the correct event label for it. And here, events at the coarsest level of the hierarchy refer to actions belonging to different gymnastic routines, such as vault, uneven bars, balance beam, and floor exercise. And secondly, when given an event, an annotator will locate all the sub-actions from the defined sets and provide their set level labels. So here I like to explain a little. Sets are mid-level categories describing sub-actions. A set could hold several technically and visually similar elements. At the finest granularity are element categories, as shown here, wolf jump. And this equips sub-actions with more detailed descriptions than the set categories. For example, a sub-action instance of the set from the set leap, jump, hop can be further described by wolf jump. So as a result, categories of actions and sub-actions in FineGym are organized according to a three-level hierarchy, namely events, sets, and elements. Meanwhile, FineGym also provides two levels of temporal annotations, namely the locations of all events in video and locations of sub-actions in an action instance, as shown in this figure. Okay, in this slide, I will elaborate a little on how we solve the problem of defining and organizing such a complex category system. The first important point is that we resort to a facial documentation provided by International Gymnastics Federation. We select 15 sets from 4 events from the latest facial codebook and did some modifications for the convenience of action understanding. But the element categories thus defined are also quite a lot, counting up to more than 500 in total. So it is still really hard for an annotator to directly and accurately provide the element label, unless he is a professional referee. So our solution is to utilize a decision tree consisting of attribute-based queries to guide the decisions. You can see this figure. The set is gymnastic terms from floor exercise, and an annotator just need to go through a series of yes or no questions, and each question may not be very hard to answer. So when he travels on the tree until he meets a leaf node, he will get an element label. He do not need to just directly define that element label. Next, as mentioned, ensuring the quality is crucial for fine-grained dataset. Towards this, we adopt a series of mechanisms, including we train the annotators carefully. We let the annotators go through several rounds of annotation tests until they meet a high accuracy. So annotators is also a hard work. And we provide various materials such as tutorial slides, tutorial video, and demo video for them to take reference to during the annotation process. And we do cross-validating among annotators. Also, very importantly, each of the annotators will receive a quick feedback from us before they start a new job the next day. So this will prevent annotators from repeating similar mistakes. Okay, next we can summarize why FineGym is distinguished from previous datasets. At first, unlike existing action datasets that focus on coarse grain categories, such as I showed 2 examples from UCF 101. The first one is playing violin, the second one is skiing. Our FineGym comprises instances from fine-grained action classes with subtle differences and consistent background. From the vault examples, you have already get knowledge about this, and you can see at the bottom left, I show some different classes from balance beam.
Dian, if I could interrupt for a question from our audience.
Okay.
If you could go back to 2 slides where you show the decision tree. Yes.
Okay.
And an audience member is curious how this decision tree is generated. Was it constructed manually? Was it from the how did you make it?
Okay, it actually built manually, built by myself. So I really learned the gymnastic knowledge, and I have to become a gymnastic expert first, and I can do my research on action understanding.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's worth it. Yeah, because if you want to provide a high quality data set for the community, you learn some domain-specific knowledge. So I think it's responsible for this data set.
Gotcha.
And just simply, okay. So enough. I will go back. This one we have already introduced. Okay. In the context, there are also a lot of course, also a lot of fine-grained action data sets in the community. But FineGym is also distinguished as the annotations are obtained with reference to expert knowledge, and more importantly, as shown here, current fine-grained datasets usually focus on small, especially head motions, such as those instances in various cooking datasets, as shown here, cutting the tomatoes. And actions in our FineGym involve rapid movements and extreme body poses, you can see in the left. And this poses new challenges for models. Okay, here I'd like to reiterate the properties of FineGym. The first is high quality, owing to the top level computations we select, the high resolution videos, the well-trained annotators, and the reference to official documents. The second is richness and diversity. Thanks to the multiple granularities, the rich temporal dynamics of our actions, the diverse viewpoints, and various human poses. Also, FineGym comprises action-centric videos with consistent backgrounds and purely focus on human actions. And the use of decision trees provide more information than just a single label and makes the whole annotation process more interpretable. Okay, thus we have done with the dataset part, and next I will introduce some empirical studies on FineGym. And I need to have a sip of water. Okay, here first, we show results of two representative methods from two classical action tasks, namely action recognition and temporal action localization. The upper half depicts the recognition performance of TSN, short for Temporal Segment Network. It's a very simple and efficient action recognition network, which is widely adopted by the community. It cut the video into segments and do random sampling within each segment. So if you are not interested to the technical details, you just forget it. But we can see the trinity from coarse to fine-grained. That is, you can see from event to set to recognizing element level categories. The performance drops dramatically, and the reliance on static visual cues such as background context is decreased as we step into finer granularity. As you can see, the green bar represents RGB features. The yellow bar represents the contribution of flow features. When we step into the finer granularity, the contribution of RGB features decreases, which means we may focus more on the temporal dynamics, the action themselves. And such trend continues and becomes clearer at the finest granularity. Okay, the lower half shows the performance of SSN, short for Structured Segment Network, for temporal action localization. Temporal action localization is to localize the action you want within a relatively long video. So as we can see, localizing sub-actions is much more challenging than localizing actions. You can see the gap between the orange line and the blue line. There's a large gap. So maybe it's because the boundaries of actions in a video record are more distinctive, but identifying the boundaries of sub-actions may require a more comprehensive understanding of the whole action, because they are all within action. They are performed by the same athlete, they have the same background, and so you have to fully understand the action, and you have to fully understand the meaning of the sub-action, and you can locate it. So it's very challenging for current methods. So our main focus is on the element level action recognition, which raises significant challenges for existing methods. You see that Gym 288 and Gym 99, the performance are not very high. So here are more results. Specifically, we select representative methods belonging to various pipelines, including 2D CM, such as TSN, TRN, TSM, and Action VOAD, and 3D CM methods, such as the very famous I3D and non-local, as well as the skeleton-based method, STJCM. So these methods are roughly studied in 3 subtasks, namely recognition of elements across all events, within an event, and within a set. So I know maybe people, you hate to see all the statistics. So if you are interested in the exact digital performances, you can just refer to our paper. And in the next following slides, I will show some analysis and findings based on these experiments we did. So we just study about these 4 questions. I will introduce them independently. The first one is about the sampling scheme. As we know, the sparse sampling scheme has been widely adopted in action recognition due to its high efficiency and promising accuracy demonstrated in various datasets. However, so you can see the green line and the orange line. This is on the one is on UCF 101, the other one is on ActivityNet. Things got something wrong here. So as the figure shows, the trend does not hold for element level action recognition in FineGym, represented by this blue line. Compared to the saturated results on existing datasets using only few frames, the result of TSN on Gym 99 steadily increases. So this indicates that every frame counts for fine-grained action recognition on FineGym. The next question is, how important is temporal information? So as I have already introduced on previous datasets, temporal modeling might not be so important because sometimes the model can cheat because they can just recognize the background, the context, the clothes the people wear, the object they interact with. So they sometimes may not need to model the temporal information of the actions. So here we studied how important is temporal modeling on FineGym. First, as we already show, for TSN, flow features will contribute more than RGB features on element level recognition. And as we know, motion features such as optical flows could capture frame-wise temporal dynamics. To further study this, we do analysis on 2 more fancy methods. TRN for temporal relational network and TSM for temporal shift module. Because both of them possess innovative modules for longer-term temporal modeling. So first we see the study for TRN. When we shuffle the input frames during testing, so the alert relationship is destroyed, and it will suffer from a severe job performance. And next, for the temporal shifting model in TSM, when we train TSM with 3 frames and tested it with more frames, so when the testing frames is very different from that in training, the performance will also drop sharply. So you can see the red line represents the performance of TSM when testing with more and more frames. So this is possibly because that very different number of frames leads to significantly different temporal dynamics. So you can note that the blue line represents the performance of TSM. The TSM maintains its performance. So why? Because TSM do not have a very complex module to model the temporal dynamics. It just adopt average pooling. So all the frames features are averaged. So it will not be affected by the number of the testing frames. So all this demonstrates that the importance of modeling temporal dynamics for fine-grained recognition of motion-intense actions.
So Dian, if we could pause here for a second, I'm still trying to parse that diagram. So
Okay.
I guess I have two questions for this. One is on the first figure. So the y-axis, UB set 1, UB set 2. Could you elaborate again? What are those data sets?
Oh, no, UB represents uneven bar. It's event level
Oh, event level. Okay.
category from Gym 99. Set 1, set 2 is the set level. So a set holds many element level categories. So here set 1, UB set 1 means means circles of uneven bars. So circles contains a lot of different kinds of circles, such as giant circle backwards with 1.5 turn on headstand position. So it's actually recognition of element level categories within set. So recall that a set holds several very similar element level categories.
Oh, okay. I
So
see. So it's
okay.
a figure, a diagram of performance gain, like when you incorporate motion and appearance features.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Could you, for the third figure, could you elaborate again on the reason why the orange line drops as you have more number of test frames? I didn't quite catch that.
Okay. So the orange line represents the original performance. So it means that during training, we learn the relation. For example, we use 3 frames and we learn the relation between them. So 1, 2, 3, they should be ordered.
Okay.
And the blue bar represents that if we shuffle those frames, so maybe the original relation we learned is 1, 2, 3, but we shuffle it to, for example, 2, 1, 3 or 3, 2, 1, and the learned relations between them is destroyed.
Okay. So where
So the performance will drop.
are you referring to the second or the third diagram?
The second diagram.
Oh, sorry. I meant the third diagram.
You mean the
Yeah.
third
So
diagram?
like the orange
Okay.
line, like why? Can you explain again why the orange line drops as you have more number of test frames?
I think it's red line.
Oh, okay.
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 Okay. First, we train the train TSM with 3 frames, and we test it with more frames. So the temporal shifting module, it learns the temporal relationships is encoded into its backbone. So it's weird because if you test with more frames, we guess, just our guess, a very different number of testing frames will lead to a very different temporal dynamics. Maybe the encoded temporal modeling is functions for only 3 frames, and you want it to model, for example, 10 frames. It cannot handle 10 frames, so it fails.
Oh, okay. So if you as the number of test frame increases, it is no longer capable of handling it. I see.
Yes,
Okay.
because so it shows the problem that the temporal modeling is not robust enough.
Okay, I see.
So
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, come back. The next question we study is, does pre-training on large-scale video data sets help? So it's as we all know, when we train models, especially those models which have a very large number of parameters, such as I3D, a common paradigm is to firstly pre-train them on large-scale data sets. For example, you pre-train your model firstly on kinetics, and you run it, you test it on UCF 101. And this pre-training could indeed lead to a performance boost. However, we observe that on our FineGym, the bonus brought by pre-training does not always exist. So here, Fx represents floor exercise. Set 1 represents floor exercise, a leap, jump, hop. Set 5 is the back salto. So in each set, there are a lot of element level categories. So when pre-training on kinetics and testing the models on these element level category recognition, the pre-training will not always help. You can see maybe on some on recognition within some set, the performance will be boosted, and the recognition within the other set, the performance will drop. And we guess that one potential reason is maybe the large gaps in terms of temporal patterns between coarse and fine-grained actions. So maybe coarse and fine-grained actions, their temporal patterns are different. So just our guess, because this is contradicts with the common paradigm.
So maybe just a guess. In other words, the pre-trained model, because it's trained on coarse-grained data set, is entirely focusing on the wrong thing or the different features, which might not be helpful. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Might be that reason. Okay. And then we may also ask a question. So we did so many analysis. What cannot be handled by current methods and modules? So what's our direction to do further future research? But by our careful analysis, we summarize some points that are still challenging for existing methods. The first one is the intense motion. You have already seen that the motions are all very quick, and sometimes you cannot grasp the actual action, and it just ends in a few seconds, sometimes ends in a second. Intense motion, just many different kinds of solos are all intense motions. And the second one is the subtle spatial semantics, such as, for example, whether the legs are bent or straight, one leg is bent or two leg is bent, which leg kick out first, and some very subtle human-object relationships. And the third one is complex temporal dynamics. We have already witnessed that temporal modeling is very important, but it's a pity that there's not a model that can well solve this to deal with this complex temporal dynamics. So for example, the direction of motion, the degree of rotation, it is really challenging for current methods. The last one is the reasoning ability models. So as we know, CNN are always treated like black box. So recall that we have the decision tree, and maybe one could use the reasoning path of the decision tree, and that might make the recognition process more interpretable, because maybe you can just figure out at which node the model fails. Okay, at last, besides coarse and fine-grained action recognition and localization, we suggest some more potential applications of FineGym. For example, auto-scoring. So why we can do auto-scoring? Because we have already provided those difficult scores for element categories. So those gymnastic actions, they are of different difficulty levels. They have different difficulty scores for human. And for example, the second, action generation, because the background context of those actions in your FineGym are consistent, and this could help those models focus more on the actions. And also, I think it might be exciting to see the models could generate some unseen, unperformed actions that are never performed by those athletes. So it's really exciting. And also multi-attribute prediction, because you know that the answer from each question node in the decision tree, it could be regarded as an attribute. So it might be used for multi-attribute prediction. And also the model interpretation, as I have already stated, we can use the reasoning path, and the recognition process might be more interpretable. So all these possible trials are just a way for outstanding researchers to follow. And also, FineGym may induce some discussions on model designs, such as how to strike a balance between accuracy and efficiency when dealing with highly informative yet subtly different actions. We know that TSN is very efficient, but it suffers from low accuracy here. And some models, they can model temporal dynamics, but they are not robust enough. So there are still a lot of room to explore. So welcome all of you to follow our work. Okay.
Sorry, just curious. By efficiency, you mean the computational efficiency, correct? Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Could you touch
and also
upon?
the cost. So the parameters to train the model. For example, if for some model you have to train it in a week, and when you evaluate it, it has to run several hours or even a day. So it's not efficient. You have to just wait there.
Okay, I'm just curious, and for I guess this is also for those who are quite not quite familiar with action understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So these models during inference time, can they usually be applied in real time, or it's still not quite possible right now?
Actually, if the model is small enough, it can be equipped in for example, in your phone, and it can run in real time. But if your model just is very large and suffer from low efficiency, so it cannot be run in real time. So
Okay.
this is why efficiency counts.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, next. So if you're interested in action understanding, I would like to advertise another one of our work. So this work is also accepted by this year's CVPR conference, but it's a totally different work with FineGym. The name is Intra and Interaction Understanding via Temporal Action Parsing. This is also a joint work with Yue Zhao, Bo Lan, and Dao Huali, the same team. And so I'd like to introduce a little of this GIF animation. So for interaction analysis, we can observe that a vault routine contains 3 stages: approach running, handspring, and then landing. And for interaction understanding, we can see that a certain sub-action may occur in different actions. For example, the Soto may occur in beam, trapline, and diving. It's also an interesting work. So if you are interested, you can just scan this QR code to go to our project page. Okay, next one, I provide a short demo to better illustrate what we did in FineGym. I think maybe video could better convey the content. The first part is about the annotation. So here the computation start, the official computation. And when an action start, it will be annotated. This is floor exercise. So action end. So here we provide a detailed illustration of fine-grained annotation. So the action start is a balance beam event. So the sub-action start is 3 turning tuck stand on 1 leg. The set is just gymnastic turns. So it's a straddle pike jump. pike jump from cross position, different jump. So it's a fly solo jump backward with a half twist. So do you feel that you are just watching a gymnastic competition? So there are some default actions since it is not collected in the codebook and we will not annotate it. You can see that the boundaries of sub-actions are really ambiguous. You have to fully understand what sub-actions is the sub-action you focus so that you can locate them. So this is why locating sub-actions is much more challenging than localizing actions. Split jump. Oh, she is going to end this routine. So the final one is the dismount sub-action. The sub-action end and the action also end. So the computation that continues. We just annotate all the event we want, different kinds of events. And finally, the computation ends. The second part is we visualize the decision tree annotation procedure. For example, here is circles from the uneven bars. So toes touch bar during circle, yes, she touches bar. And two legs are together when toes on bar, yes, the two legs just kept together. So is it a circle backward? Yes, it's circle backward. So you can see that answer each question is not so difficult because you just to focus on part of the action. But if just give you this action and you directly define the element level categories is very difficult. So finally, we get the result. Okay, that's all about today's talk. So if you are interested in any one of our work, please see our paper and project page for more details. Thank you. So any questions?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much. And that demo was really cool, and I think our audience enjoyed it. And
Thank you.
someone said it's so cool. Yeah, we do have a few questions lined up in the chat room. Let me go through them one by one. So I guess the first question is, because you mentioned it's pretty impressive that you in the process become a expert in gymnastics. So I guess my question is, and this is also the audience. My question is can you like is this is this inevitable, or like when you are trying to, in your experience, when you're trying to create a data set, do you must have the domain knowledge that goes deep enough for you to create a very meaningful data set?
Okay, I think if you want to build some high quality and fine-grained data set, a domain-specific knowledge is required. But if you have other ways, for example, you can hire an expert, you can just pay for it. That's all right. But I think because for this work, we have to do a lot of preparation. And I think it is not, for me, it is not, I think it's worth it to learn these gymnastic knowledge because I can also involve in the data checking, in the quality control. So I think for PhD students, learning new things is not so difficult. So I just train myself.
Okay,
So
right.
you can resort to other experts as well if you have money.
Okay, so Amir is wondering. So it seems that you built a pretty elaborate process when during collecting this when constructing this data set. So how scalable is the process? In other words, excuse me, if I
Mhm,
want to do something similar with another sport, or even
mhm.
maybe not even sport, right? Maybe some actions
Something.
for other types of actions. Like,
Okay.
can this how I guess how much of this process can be scalable, like so that we can construct another set rapidly, or do you think we still have to do everything from scratch manually?
Okay, this is really a good question. It's also a question asked by the reviewers. So I think the experience we learned during building FineGym can also be generalized to building other data sets. For example, uh, the decision tree process. So you can utilize it to build data sets of other domain, and also how to collect the data, how to define the categories, and how to do the quality control. All the experience can be used to build another similar data sets. You do not need to figure out how to do that by yourself, because we have already get out a path for you to follow.
Okay, okay, awesome. Another question. Ali was at. Oh, so okay, so I skipped a little bit. So does the collection does it working? I guess the question is can the data be collected and annotated in real time, or do you require some kind of a post production for the video sequence?
uh, the data is first downloaded from YouTube, and then we cut it into 10-minute chunks, because maybe one computation video is too long. It usually about 2 hours. We cut it into 10-minute chunks, and the annotators will annotate it. Uh, so annotate it in real time. Cannot fully understand this
Oh, sorry.
question.
I think I might have understood his question. I think he's more talking. He's more asking like what kind of post processing that is required for the video sequence,
Annotating.
or as soon as you have collected the video, say in a live sport, like you have collected the raw video. What are some of the actual steps you need to
Okay.
take?
So after collect raw videos, you need to first cut it into relatively short chunks, because labeling two long videos is maybe slow for annotators to process. And then for the annotators, you have to design good annotation tools for the annotators to use. For example, we just design a specific annotation tools for building FineGym. The tools is also very important, and also the feedback platform. All this worth noting, I think.
Okay, okay, gotcha. So, the I believe this is the last question. So were you able to determine? So in the data set, is there a way to determine which area of the image triggers the annotation?
Which area of the okay? Currently, no. So just but if you'd like to explore it, you might try to use a model to study this question. I think it's a good research direction, because you can figure out which attributes are most distinctive for distinguishing an action. So if this audience just interested in this direction, he could do some experiments and have a try.
Okay. So we have one more question. Can you
Okay.
estimate the number of videos necessary given the number of sub actions and intricacies, uh, say for subjective measure, especially for activity quality or grade classifier? I'm still trying to parse this question.
So I'm a little confused, but I guess maybe
So
this question is about the scale of the data set.
so
So
let me try to rephrase from my understanding. So I think the question is basically asking, um, given and there is some like intricacies, there could be some subjective measure, like when people are annotating the uh, assuming there maybe I'm wrong, like maybe there could be some subjective measure when people
Mm-hmm.
are annotating a data set. So
Mm-hmm.
how many videos is necessary? How many videos is necessary for because you have so many sub actions. You have
Mm-hmm.
so many sub. Yes, yes. I think he clarified. It is about the scale of the data set. Because you have
Okay.
so many categories and actions. Like what
Mm,
do you have a some opinion on the scale that is needed for it to become useful?
okay. Currently, the total defined categories is 530, and during the unbalanced use of gymnastic actions, because some actions are popular, some actions are not, and some actions are used in the past, maybe in just mid 90s, and some actions are popular now. So at least 300 and more than 350 got one instance at least. And Gym 99 has 99 categories, and the total sub-action instance is more than 30,000. Yes, and currently we have two versions of the FineGym. The version 101 already has about 40,000 instances. So uh, we can see that it's a large scale fine-grained data set. Yeah. So
Okay.
it can be used to train your model. It's adequate for training deep models.
Okay. Cool. Okay, that's good to know. Um, Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. So we are also at a 1 hour mark, so we're about
Okay.
we're about run of time. So I
Okay.
really I would like to thank Dian Shao for waking up so early from in the morning, and I believe we have a 12-hour difference, and I believe this is our first live stream from East Asia. So so
Oh,
so appreciate your taking the time,
my
and
pleasure.
I know that you took time to prepare, and I really appreciate that, and congratulations to the really great work.
Thank
You're
you.
definitely more than welcome to come to our platform later for if you have some future work, and thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, so with that, we'll conclude today's live stream, and thanks everybody for joining us. I think we have that's all the event for this week, but I think we have a few other events lined up next week. So check out our latest events at AI.SCIENCE. And with that, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening or good morning, depending on where you are.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.